Hi, I think we're live. Coming to you from Zoom today because I wanted to see if we could do some stuff together. So, I should tell you who I am. I am Pastor K.C, Associate Pastor and Director of Family Ministries at Boundary. And I want to wish you a very happy new week and a very happy new month. Even though it's kind of dreary out here just outside of Washington. So perhaps maybe where you are, you're getting a little bit of sun or some good weather. It's also raining. So there we are. As always, I get to be the one to recommend worship to you. I just want to say that yesterday the music was phenomenal. There was this really amazing anthem. And so I hope you'll get a chance to check it out if you missed it. And I'm ready to just like hop into what we're going to do today, which is going to be a little bit weird and a little bit different, but surely you expect that from me by now. So I want to talk about Hebrew, if that's okay. Hebrew is by far my favorite biblical language, and there's something beautiful and poetic and creative about it, and it's where I spent most of my study in school. And so I thought we would talk about some like Hebrew basics and utilize some of the resources that I use when I'm reading the Hebrew text. And if you don't find that interesting, then I am so sorry. So the first thing that I want to show us is the Hebrew alphabet. And we're just going to kind of walk through it. This is the Hebrew alphabet. These are consonants. Vowels are symbols utilized beneath the consonant sounds, but there are some consonants that can also be vowels. It's like super amazing. So Hebrew is obviously a symbol language. It's read from right to left. So the alphabet begins here and ends here. So this is Aleph, which is it's technically silent, but most Hebrew scholars would say that it is the sound just before the A in apple. So that sound, bet, which can be pronounced bet or vet, depending upon whether or not there's a dot in the center of the consonant. So it would go right here. If there's a dot, it's pronounced bet. If there's not a dot, it's pronounced vet. And most often those dots are only utilized when it's being written for English speakers. So if it was being written for native speakers, then you wouldn't have that dot in there and you would just have to kind of guess. Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zion, Chet. So that CH is Chet. Tet, Yod, which is one of those that's weird that can also be a y as a vowel. Like us, we have Y, which can also sometimes be a vowel. So vowel or consonant there. Kaf or chaf, lamed, mem, nun, samech, ayin, which is also a silent one. Pe or fe, tzadeh, kof, resh, shin or sin, and tav. And some of these, I'll just tell you, some of them have final forms too. So you'll see them look differently at the end of Hebrew words than they look in the middle. And then when we get into some of the other resources, I'll show you kind of what the vowels look like and how to look at those. The first resource I want to show you is this Hebrew English Tanakh, this is most of the time what I'm utilizing when I'm reading Hebrew text, primarily because it is a translation by the Jewish Publication Society, which is perhaps the most accurate in a sense that it gets the sort of the life and the breadth of the Hebrew text in here. A lot of our Bibles don't do that, just to be honest with you. And And some of you may know this, but translations are very, very different in how they approach the scripture. And so we, as United Methodists, typically tend to use the New Revised Standard Version, which is a literal translation, meaning it's as close to the original text as it possibly can be. But there are other texts out there that are translations that are not as literal, meaning they took some liberties. And if you want to talk about what those are, we totally can. But anyway, there's also this thing called the Septuagint, which is a real irritator of mine, because at one point, I'm sure you can't imagine this happened, but at one point, the Hebrew text got translated into Greek, because those are the words of Jesus, right? And so, which is great. I'm not saying that's not great. It's totally great. But they took this Hebrew language and the Hebrew text, and they translated it into Greek, and then because there was so much translation happening from Greek, like to Latin and to English, they utilized the Septuagint to translate the Old Testament to English and Latin. And so what happens is you have this creative, beautiful, active, living, breathing language. It's meant to be spoken. It's not even meant really to be written down, because you lose all of its meaning. Not all of it, most of it. And they took that language and they translated it into Greek, which was meant for what? Logos and reason and math and science. So they took this creative, beautiful thing, translated it into this very sort of research, data-driven, reason-filled language, and then utilize that translation to translate it into English. So you're like 75 degrees of Kevin Bacon away from what the actual language is meant to convey. And that's how some of our Bibles were translated for so long. So anyway, don't get me on my Hebrew soapbox, but so yeah, so this is my Hebrew English Tanakh. And so we talked about it being read right to left. So nothing's mirrored on my screen. You can see that this book opens what we English speakers and readers would say from the back. And so the Tanakh contains these sections: the Torah, which is obviously the first 5 books of Moses, which we're familiar with, the Nevi'im, which are the prophets, and the Ketuvim, which are the writings, and that goes all the way to 2nd Chronicles. And so then you'll see where it starts here in Genesis. There is the Hebrew text over here alongside the English text. So it makes it easier to kind of word for word see what the Hebrew text is saying. And I don't know if I can get this close enough, but you can, no. This is actually written for English speakers. It has those dots to tell you how to pronounce it, and it also has all of the vowels in it as well. So yeah, I wanted to show you some other resources specifically that I like to use when I'm diving into the Hebrew text. And one of those is called the Blue Letter Bible, and it's an online resource. And I thought we could kind of take it from the beginning step. So let's do that. Let's start here. I was doing this. Okay, so it's blueletterbible.org. And I just picked out a text for us from Ezekiel. So you can start with an actual pericope, like an entire group of text. You can start with one verse. If you have a word, basically this thing is kind of an online concordance plus. It has a whole bunch of extra stuff, which is amazing. So we would type in Ezekiel 37:2. This is the verse that we want to dive into more closely. This one doesn't have the New Revised Standard Version, but it does have the Revised Standard Version, which is close. So we'll type in our text, select our version, and then we'll click search. And what'll happen here is it'll pull up all of chapter 37. And so you have them kind of one on top of the other. And we'll select our verse that we're looking at, Ezekiel 37:2. And then it pulls down this drop down, which is amazing. So it has the Masoretic text there. You can see that. And then look, there's the Septuagint. And so let's see. Let's click it again. Okay, so this is what you'll see over here. You'll see the English translation in the King James Version. And the reason why that's important is because of this Strong's Concordance. So this is Strong's Concordance of the Bible, James Strong. It's a huge resource and asset in biblical text and exegetical work, that kind of thing. But it's based on the King James Version, so there's that. Anyway, so this pulls, that's not the right one. This pulls the Strong's number. And so let's choose, let's choose this phrase, in the open, panim here, panim. And you'll see the pe, nun, yod, mim. So yeah, you'll see those words there. We'll click on the Strong's number. And what it will pull up here is, remember how I told you we would see vowels? So this T, this small T under here, that it looks like a T, is actually an A. So pa, ah. And then this underneath the noon, this one little dot is an E. And it's elongated because of this yod that follows. So paniim. And so here, it'll give us the transliteration, how you pronounce it, whole thing. If there's any etymology, it'll give you that as well. If it comes from a root word, if it's an extended word or something like that. And then over here to the right, it'll show you every place that the word paniim is found in the Hebrew text, everywhere. So you'll see it's found a bunch of different times in a bunch of different places. So if we scroll down, it'll give us the definitions. Okay, so this is an outline of how it's used in the biblical text to mean face. Okay, which you'll remember when we clicked on it, it said in the open. Face, presence or a person. So a face of a person, a face of seraphim or cherubim, so angels, face of animals, face of the surface or of the ground, as an indicator of location. So before or behind, toward, in front of, and with preparation. So what's so fascinating about this part is that, let me see if I can see you. Okay. What's so fascinating about panim is that for the Hebrew, for the Hebrew language and for the ways in which they communicated these things, a human face wouldn't be seen as different than the face of the earth. It's so integrated and holistic and beautiful in that regard that all of the living, breathing parts of the universe would have a face, and that would be not something that would be difficult to understand or comprehend. And yet when you go to translate that, it seems a little wonky, right? Like, how do you communicate that particular notion of the face of everything? And you'll see that it gets translated a bunch of different ways, right? And so that's just kind of one example of how that works. Now, I wanted to show you just a few more things. I wanted to look at two other Hebrew words. Chesed, which is one of my favorite Hebrew words ever. Chesed is translated most literally as loving kindness. It's the Hebrew word for the human love that we show to one another, and it's the word for the love that God gives to us. But if you'll see here, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, it also means a reproach or shame. And it would be up to the person who's communicating how and when it's used in a particular text. So you could see how there may be some translating implications here with this particular text having two very different meanings. It seems, right? But if you think about it as zeal, right? Zeal could sort of fall in both of those categories. So like there's this underlying current of what this word actually means. And most of the time it's the energy behind the thing, right? So what is the energy behind God's love? So yeah, that's one example. The other one is yada, which you may know, it means to know. And you'll see how many times it is over here in the Hebrew text as well. And then I want you to look at all of these definitions. And these are all different tenses of the word. So call is a tense, to know, to learn to know, to perceive, to discriminate, to distinguish, to know by experience, to admit, acknowledge, confess, to consider, to know, to be acquainted with, or to know a person carnally, or to know how or be skillful in. And then in the nifal, to be made known, in the pael, to cause to know, in the poel and puel, to be known, hifel, to make known, hofel and hithpael, to make oneself known or to reveal oneself. So many different ways of translating that one word, yada, that shows up this many times in the Hebrew text. You can imagine that like at some point you just kind of have to pick like what tense is this particular verb and how is this meant to be communicated, right? So this is why having at least some minimal knowledge and skills in utilizing the resources and tools that are out there can be helpful in reading the Hebrew text. And yeah, I would just encourage you, if you've ever been curious about like Hebrew or about unlocking the Hebrew text, to utilize Blue Letter Bible. It's such a great, wonderful online resource. If you don't have a JPS Hebrew English Tanakh, it's a great resource also. And yeah, if you want to talk more about Hebrew, I'm a nerd and would be super happy to talk to you about it. Yeah, it might be fun to do some more of this. So we'll see. But it's been awesome to be with you today. And I pray that you'll stick around to our social media this week. And yeah, just stay tuned for all the things that we have going on at Foundry. And I can't wait to see you again soon. And so, as always, good noon, everybody.